Diane. I could tell Janice Krause wrote that little thing that she just read. Janice is a wonderful friend. Whew, I can hardly see you. How has your day been? It's been good? The schedule is all mixed up. I was supposed to talk to you this morning. What have you heard about today? What speaking have you already heard? Sex? Did someone say that? Okay. What else? What else did you learn about? Marriage? Wow, okay, we went out of order. I'm talking about dating. Okay? Tell me, does your brain hurt right now? Have you heard so much that your brain hurts? Are you okay? You okay? Kind of? All right. Well, I'm sorry to interrupt your lunchtime with the crazy schedule changes. But I think this is a really fun topic, and it's very important because we can't get to the other two things, at least we shouldn't, until we do this part first, right? It's really good to review together how we handle this part of our lives. How many people in here are single? Okay, we have a lot of married and a lot of single people. Just a little heads up for all the married men in the room. Don't stop dating. Date your wife continually through your marriage. So where do we begin with this topic? I like to start at the beginning. I'm a Methodist, and I'm going to be speaking to you from the position of traditional Orthodox Christianity, because that's who I am, and I don't know any other way to approach this. But I just love delving into this, so try to track with me here. We're going to talk about the nature of God. And the Bible reveals his nature. And the Bible also reveals to us what our nature is. So it's really important that we understand what that is. The Bible reveals to us God's purposes for his creation. And so when we're considering important things in our life, including dating, we need to consider what God has to say about who we are. And that starts with who he is. He's one being, and he's three co-eternal persons. He's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. God is eternally personal. He is eternally relationship. Before he ever created anything, God is relationship. And he is love. And his love, repeat these words after me. God's love is described as self-sacrificing. Say that. Self-sacrificing, other-oriented, self-offering, mutual love. So if you want to know who God is, who is this one you're supposed to trust, who is this one you're supposed to give your life to, that's who he is. That's his nature, his essence, his character. All flows out of that beautiful description. And we learn about that from Scripture. He's one, he's union, and everything that he does flows out of this wonderful being of who he is. So before he was ever a sovereign king, he's a father. Before he was ever a savior, he is God the Son. So God is relationship. God is family in himself. It's very important to start there. And his nature is always sending forth. He's always other-oriented, always for the good of the other, never self-centered. And that's how, and he's the one who created us. And he took clay and he formed clay into human beings, and he breathed his own breath into the clay. And that's how we become fully human. And he called that very good. So to be human requires that we keep our faces turned toward the face of God. If we're not looking directly to his face and breathing in the life of God that we learned from Genesis 2:7, we cannot be fully human persons. And that's what Adam and Eve did. They said, No. And they turn their face like that to God. And I don't know if any of you have ever done that to anyone in your life, where you just turn your head and you give someone the back of your head. That's called contempt. And that's what we've done to God. And that depersonalizes us, because we don't have any access to the one who is true personhood. Our personhood is completely dependent on our being face to face with the one who is the source of life. And so when Adam and Eve turned away, we inherited what is a self curved in on self, and that's sin. So today we're talking about dating, and that is a draw that God created in us to unify us as one flesh. And so all the delight and the thrill and the passion that come with dating, those are all things that God designed to bring us deep satisfaction in our life. In order to become, He wanted to create, out of a male and a female, He wanted to create an icon of His own nature, as His image to the world, as a witness, a couple, a man and a woman living in completing, mutual, sacrificial, self-offering, holy love. Does that make sense? Okay? I know it's a lot to think about, but we can't move into dating until we understand that we have to receive from the one who created us the nature that He created us to have. So to be human, to be a human person, by definition, is to be incomplete. We need each other. So our dating has to flow out of that. Now, the number one rule for living with sanity and meaning in our life is to say, my life does not belong to me, my life belongs to God. Okay, so repeat that. My life does not belong to me, it belongs to God. So that's basically what it means when it says the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And I know that some of you may want to send a newsflash to your parents so that they can understand that your life does not belong to them either. Your life belongs to God. And when that happens, we realize we don't get to make the choices for our life anymore. The Lord makes those for us. We don't choose where we go to college. We let Him do that. We don't choose our major. We let the Lord reveal to us what our major is and our job. And the same with our sexuality. We don't get to make those decisions. We let Him reveal those things to us. We yield to His design and His purpose. So if we turn our faces away from His face, that's depersonalizing. And that's the foundation of anthropology, is knowing that to be a person is to have the breath and the life of God in us. And we in this room do not want to be depersonalized, because we will depersonalize the people we date, and that means we will use them for our own self. And we don't want to do that to people we date. We don't want to do that to people we're married to. But we will do that. You will use people unless you are yielded and surrendered to God. We must cling to Him full-faced. And the good news is that we don't have to be stuck in that self-curved nature. We're not stuck there. Sinfulness is not essential to being human. And God created us to live and to dwell as intimate lovers and friends with Him, and that's who we were before we were sinners. And that's where we begin an understanding of our anthropology, is in the garden with Him. And He's able to restore us, and He wants to restore us. And so God Himself, God the Son, became a human person. He took on our clay, and He became a zygote, the creator of the universe. And He became an embryo and a fetus. Jesus Christ knows what it was like to be an unplanned pregnancy. He took on our human nature. He was an infant and a toddler. And He was even a young man who went through puberty. He knows what it's like to be human. And he took all of that into himself so that he could understand our natures, and he can offer himself to us, and he can help us with our dating. He's for us, he understands our temptations, he understands our needs. And he cares, and he wants to help us. So when I start talking about dating, this is where I start. And I don't make apology for that, because if you're not living a yielded and surrendered life to the triune God, you really need to wonder if you're ready to date. I'm asking you not to date unless you're really seriously considering yielding your life to God, because you're going to hurt someone. Dating is not a game. You are handling somebody's very precious and fragile heart. And just believing correct things about your faith is not going to change who you are. We need to be surrendered and filled and transformed to be people who are not selfish. So it doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter what your GPA is, it doesn't matter where you went to college. None of that matters. You can still deeply damage someone unless you are yielded and given completely to God. So I just want to start off talking about dating by saying that I am very much in favor of dating. There was a movement for a long time that cautioned us about dating, saying it's not a good idea, we should probably just hang out and not date. I don't think that's been very helpful. I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't think the hanging out routine has been very fruitful. I think it's been kind of painful. But I also love to think about the possibility of young people marrying young instead of waiting until they're very established in life. I think it's a beautiful thing. It's just very cool to think about your life coming into union with another life while you're still figuring it all out. While you're figuring out who you are and what you're here for. How wonderful to come into an understanding of those things in relationship to your life partner, rather than establishing all of those things and then looking around for someone who will support all your notions about yourself and who you think you are and what your life plan deserves. That's a lot of pressure to put on another person. So, if possible, just go ahead and begin to pursue very seriously looking for a life partner in dating young. And I assume that two people who marry young are fully adult in their behavior at that point, because they form one another. When you marry, you form one another within a creative and committed love, and you disciple each other. You become who you are based on the person you're married to. I'm so decisively the person I am because of my husband. He very much has formed my interests and my loves and my passions, and I have done the same in his life. And that's the beauty of becoming one flesh. And that's why it's so critical that we date and we court well and wisely. And the experience is really important for understanding who we are as men and women. We need each other, men and women, we need each other in each other's lives. I'll tell a story. At my daughter's wedding in June, there was a whole lot of really crazy fun dancing at the wedding. It was wild. It was mayhem. It was super fun. But a few days later, I realized that what was happening at the wedding was pretty much this ginormous, sweaty blob. It was 100 degrees, and we were outside, of people dancing together by themselves. Have you seen that? I'm sure you have. Everyone dancing together, but you're dancing by yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's super fun. But I couldn't get out of my mind the haunting scene of one of my members of my young adult group. She was standing on the sidelines like this, just watching. And I couldn't stop thinking about her a few days later. I know her very well. She's gorgeous. She's brilliant. She's excessively talented, that in such unfair amounts. And she's a way better than average dancer. And yet, there she stood on the sidelines, not joining in. And something is wrong with that picture. And I plan to talk to my son, who's 20 years old, about this over Thanksgiving break, because he should have asked her to dance. They're very good friends, but he didn't. And this is what I'm wondering about. And you all think this through with me, okay? I am wondering, the men in that crowd, I think, should have taken upon themselves their true responsibility of making sure that the women were asked to dance. Now, men, look at me. I'm very serious about this. You see this. This is what's true. If you men do not ask us to dance, then we women are going to struggle with understanding what it fully means to be us. We need you in our lives. We cannot experience fully being female, dancing in a group with our girlfriends. We need you to pursue us. We must be sought. We must experience this, even if it's just our male cousin, or our uncle, or our brother. We need men to come and invite us to be female. Does that make sense? Okay. And you need to take the risk to ask us to dance. You will never experience what it means to be masculine until you know how to encounter and treat women well. I will say that again. You will never know what it means to be fully masculine until you know in your being how to encounter and treat women well. Helmut Thielicke says that masculinity is a relational concept. A male comprehends his nature when he lives in encounter with females. And that's not the same as hanging out. These encounters might include just simple gracious acts of kindness, like asking us to dance. That is an act of supreme kindness. Opening doors for us, standing aside so that we can go first through a space, offering to walk us back to our dorm if it's late, carrying, having things for us. Women have been told by the feminist movement that experiencing those acts toward us by men is devaluing to us. That is just not true at all. Our refusal to allow you to treat us with gentlemanly behavior is selfishness on our part. We are denying you what you need. We both are fulfilled through this kind of relating. Now, obviously, men and women relate in completely different ways, and this requires in dating that we exhibit personalizing behavior toward one another, and that's deep respect and kindness and deference for the nature of the other person. Kindness and respect for the nature of the other person. So, if we're surrendered to the God of holy love, breathing in his very life consistently, we're going to put the well-being of the other person above our own interests. And that is the foundation of dating. Okay, now we know it's not good to be alone. So, spending time with someone is probably dating. I know that in your generation, you've changed the vocabulary, so you're talking. When is it dating? When do you call it dating? When is a consensual agreement to be exclusive? Facebook official. Oh, I forgot. That's when it is. I knew that. Okay. But if you're spending time together, you're kind of dating. You just are. You just don't call it that. But I'm going to go quickly through the progression of intimacy. When you first enter into a relationship with someone, you like them because they make you feel good. You're attracted to them because of the way they make you feel. That's kind of selfish, right? The next level You move to the next stage, and you start thinking about that person a lot. And then you start thinking about their well-being. I wonder if they're having a good day. I wonder how they are. So you moved on, a little bit less self-centered. Then we move into a more intimate phase where we want to know things about this person. We want to know their stories, their past, their childhood, what they like, their dreams, their passions, their pains and their heartaches. I just want to warn you, that's very intense. That's very intimate. And you can be with a person for 3 or 4 months and never kiss them. But you are deeply intimate because you're talking about this stuff. So you're sharing deep levels of intimacy. You're not kissing, you're not touching, you're being really well behaved, but you're sharing deep intimacy. So be aware that that's what's happening, because to know is more than just intellectual understanding. It's apprehending and comprehending a person. So then you move into even more depths of intimacy where you begin to care more about that person than you care about yourself. That's called love. They matter more than you do to yourself. Now this is the explosive part. And you've talked about this already today a little. First you want to know everything about them, then you want them to know everything about you. You want to share your ideas, your thoughts, your dreams, your passions, your fears with them. And right along with that, bam, because we're not only a mind, we're not just a heart, a soul, or spirit, we are a body as well. You begin to want to share your body. You want to give them your body. It's a natural progression, and you want to have theirs. And that's a natural progression of intimacy, and we're created that way, and it's good. But be aware of the spending time together and what happens and how that occurs. So just watch where you are. Now, in their sexuality, males are naturally wired to be able to separate themselves personally from sex. Women do not do that naturally. The nature of a woman's sexuality is to receive, to give herself. She participates in a relationship with her whole being. Men don't necessarily do that. And ultimately, in marriage, she totally surrenders herself. This is what happens to a woman. She surrenders her mystery. She surrenders her mystery. Do you see how sacred that is? How precious that is? So we need to be so very careful. But she also owns that man's heart entirely. So girls, you need to be careful as well. Both people give themselves entirely and surrender to the other. It's a sacred mystery. Hooking up is separating the physical from the personal, and it causes loss to our personhood. To the woman, it causes damage to the substance of her very nature. And if the man does that to her, he is not going to live in wholeness in his sexuality either, because he did not regard her nature. He's harming her, and to harm another person causes damage to his own personhood. It's a loss of his substance. This is real. This really happens to us. And both are harmed as persons. It's very serious, and that's why we need God to help us live lives unselfishly as we date. And this is why our dating should not be casual, but actually purposeful. Okay, what are some good things that can come from dating? Just throw some stuff out there.
Emotional support.
Emotional support, yes, good. What else?
Learning communication.
Good. Learning communication skills. It's very important. If you don't know how to talk to somebody, dating is good practice. What else? Friendship. Good. Love? Good. What's the ultimate purpose of dating?
Marriage.
Right. Ultimately, the reason we're dating is to find the one we're going to marry. At your age, where you are in life, we're done with, I mean, if you ever were into recreational dating, you're done with that. It's just not, you can't do that anymore. It's a purposeful thing. Okay, what are some fundamental guidelines for dating? I'm just going to go through this very quickly because you can read hundreds of books on this stuff. How do do you know, what are some guidelines for deciding, is this person going to be good for me to marry or not? How do you determine in dating? Should I break this off or not? Equally yoked, good, same faith. Respect, mutual respect. What else? Excuse me? Okay, virtuous, very good. Both sides, right? Okay, good. I had an interesting conversation with a man in my young adults group. I think he's 27 years old, and he just could not get over his college sweetheart. She was the soccer goalie on the college team. She was really awesome, super fun, vivacious. He just could not get over this girl. And he was telling me about her, and then one day he told me that she kind of cusses. In fact, she cusses quite a bit. I said, seriously? Okay, think about this. Picture this woman rocking your children to sleep, saying their prayers with them, and tucking them in. And he said, whoa. He could not imagine that girl, the mother of his children. And that's one very helpful way to look at the person you're dating. Does the guy have perverted humor? Is he a video game addict? I mean, you just say, oh, sorry, that's not going to be the father of my children. If the girl cusses or dresses immodestly or whatever, you can just kind of say, not the mother of my children. That's a very helpful way to begin to look at the person you're with. Will they be a good spouse? How do we know are they going to be a good spouse? What are things you look for? How they treat their parents. The way they treat their parents is how they'll treat you. What else? Responsibility. Good. Hard worker, responsible. What about this one? What if your girlfriend cheats on you? Do you let it go? Well, I promise you this. If your girlfriend cheats on you, she will cheat on you when you're married. If a guy is unfaithful, he will be an unfaithful husband. If your girlfriend enjoys being flirted with by other guys while you're dating her, she's going to enjoy being flirted with after you're married. So those are some things you can look at very carefully. When you're dating, go very slowly with your communication and your hearts. And don't be in places where you're all alone. And that doesn't mean you have to hang out in your parents' living room all the time. But be in places where other people can see you and where you can see other people. Public places. It's very helpful. And I want to talk about the nonstop texting and dating. Sometimes people can text literal books in a week's time to one other person, and then they deceive themselves into thinking they're not dating that person. That's very intimate. And I think it's something worth thinking about. How much do we communicate and build a relationship out of texting? I just think it's worth consideration. We can become real intimate and share depths of things through the cyber world that we wouldn't face to face, and some lines can be crossed in that kind of communicating that doesn't really stand up to reality. We can go a little further than we mean to. And women, I just want to encourage you to look for a man who just expect more from the men you date, to rise above that. I think it's a little juvenile to build an entire relationship out of texting. It's just something to think about. Another thing this is kind of a mom thing, but I think it's not the wisest thing to text while you're in bed. Anybody ever thought about that before? Is that weird? I mean, think about it. You're laying there in bed and you're communicating with a person. Emotionally, it could go a little far. It does have an effect. It's just something to think about. The cyber world makes us feel as if there's no geography anymore. It destroys our natural boundaries as embodied persons. And we need to pay attention to that. You're not required to answer every single text that comes your way. Be creative as you're aware of these kind of dehumanizing effects. And look for a way to have an acoustic relationship. Be creative, have fun. Keep physical touch out of the picture when you're dating as long as you can. One thing, guys, even just putting your arm around a woman, putting your arm around her back, around her shoulder, I don't know if you understand what that does to a woman. You just think you're just kind of hanging out and being nice, but she's likely instinctively going to interpret the feelings that that kind of activity generates as protection from you, with commitment. So just be aware of the physical touch. I'm not going to say never do it. Just be very aware. Holding hands can be extremely intimate. You might want to save that for a little later down the road. Hugging, full body frontal hugs. And women, just don't do it. There's some things, just be careful. And what is going too far? What's the line? What's going too far? Anything that causes sexual arousal is going too far. Just a little bit too much heat. And don't ever touch any body parts that you don't have any of. That's a rule. Never say the word love unless you are facing marriage very close in the future. Just reserve that word. Now, I just want to talk to the men here in this room for a second again. I am in awe of men. I think men are absolutely amazing. Seriously, I love to just watch you. I love to watch how you talk. I love to watch how you do things. One of my favorite things in the world is to watch men run really fast. When I think of magnificent creatures on the planet, I think of horses, I think of lions, and I think of men. I am not making that up. I am in awe of who you are. You are an incredible mystery to me in a most grand kind of way. You're awesome, awesome beings. And you are hardwired for the hunt. You're hardwired for the struggle, for challenge, for risk-taking. And God made you that way. And you are providers, you're protectors, you're warriors. Many of you are athletes. I think that's awesome. But one of the things that distresses me and worries me is, where do you think most men expend this creative and incredible aspect of their being? How much of their time, and where do you think they expend being hunting, challenging, taking risks? Where do they do that? Where do most men do that? Did someone say video games? Yes, video games. Okay. I am just asking you to really think about that. Because basically what you're doing in those games, I'm not saying never do that, but I'm just saying watch your time. You're taking the magnificence and the honor and the depth and the wonder of who you are, and you're flushing it. It's going nowhere. It's not producing anything. It can become an addiction. It's one of the #1 causes of divorce in our country. And so what I want you to do is think about taking what you're created for, this magnificent wiring that God made into you, and take the lead and ask girls out on dates. It's much more fun than Call of Duty or whatever that game is. That is for cowards compared to asking a woman out on a date. You hear what I'm saying? And I'm not saying this to pick on you at all. I want you to flourish. I want you to move into and live into who you're created to be. And we need this. We need this. Do you know how many hundreds and thousands of brilliant, gorgeous women have never been asked on a date one time in their life? And they're like 30, 35 years old. That is your fault. And and it's your responsibility. And so I just invite you to can the pansy hanging out the group thing. Don't just, it's not enough. And move into asking girls out on dates. You need to experience this pursuit. You need it, okay? And I'm just going to give you a few little tips on what women want, all right? Women want a man who pursues hard after God more than anything. You want to be attractive to a woman? Pursue God with all your being. That is hot. Like nothing else. And women want a man to pursue her. And please do not be a mama's boy. If you're a mama's boy, I love that you love your mama. I love that my son loves me. But a mama's boy is a man whose mother does all his grown-up life for him. Fills out his applications, makes sure he's going to work on time. Move on from that and become a provider and a hard worker. Women do not want you to have to be wealthy for them. They just want you to be able to make them feel secure. They need your faithfulness and safety. Women love men who love strangers and love the weak. Love the down and outers. Love the lonely. That's very attractive. And women, it's the same. Men are attracted to women who are kind. Women who are kind to people, not in their friend group, but kind to everyone. Women are attracted to men who love their friends, who are deep, loyal friends, who are kind, thoughtful, strong, and gentle men. Now, how do you ask a woman on a date? Just think of something fun to do. Something simple, doesn't have to be a big deal. Ice cream, coffee, something small. Doesn't have to be expensive. No texting. Do not text a girl to go on a date. Call her on the phone or ask her in person. And give a woman 2 days notice. What's today? Thursday? Okay, you want to take her out on Saturday? You have to ask her out today. You know why? Women, well, for one thing, it's respectful, but women love to have something to look forward to. I've told my husband this all the time. Give me some days to look forward to our date. Ask me out 5 or so days ahead of time. It's respectful, but women just love that. Dress nicely when you go on a date. This honors her and shows her respect. Wear a shirt with a collar, look nice, smell good, comb your hair, just so you show respect. Have a plan. Don't show up and say, what do you want to do? Have a plan. Oh, I had the funnest experience. My daughter, who just got married, she made some really lousy choices when she was in high school with her dating. Really bad choices. Really hurt herself. So when she finally decided to do things right, she had her boyfriend come and live. He lives in Indiana. He lived with us, not in our home, but in an apartment in our city for an entire summer, just so her parents could get to know him well. She wanted to make sure she didn't blow this again. The guy, he's so awesome. He had never been on a date in his life. He'd never had a girlfriend. He'd never kissed a girl. He didn't know anything about any of that. So I got to teach him how to ask Meredith out. And I got to go through all of these steps with him in the kitchen when Meredith was off doing something else. And I said, have a plan. You know where you're going to eat, you know what you're going to do, you know what you're going to do after that. It's just a really fun way and a very exciting and it's respectful of the woman. And on a date, no touching. You don't need to touch. It's not necessary. Now women, guidelines for dating. If you don't want to accept the invitation on a date, you have to realize the extreme courage it took that guy to ask you out. It is like walking into death to ask a girl out on a date, the risk of rejection. If you don't want to go, you need to say, thank you very much. You have honored me so much by asking. I don't think this is best for our relationship right now, but I want to thank you. make sure you respond with deep gratitude, but do not accept the invitation if you really don't want to go. That does not help a guy. If you do accept the invitation, dress modestly. Dress very modestly and be helpful in carrying on the conversation. Don't put all the weight on him. You jump in. He worked really hard to ask you out. You make sure that he is enjoying the time with you, that you're building him up, you're being encouraging to him. You help make the time fun and enjoyable. That's your responsibility. And don't defraud him. Don't lead him to believe something that isn't real about your relationship. Guys, same with you. And girls, no touching. Don't touch the guy. Don't put your hand on his leg. Do not do that. Just be very polite and enjoy each other tremendously. Girls, I'm going to talk about something here that goes along with dating, but don't be a princess. Don't be a diva. If your parents spoiled you by providing you with every kind of material excess, I am very sorry that happened, because that did not help you. That did a disservice to you, and it does a disservice to any man who wants to move in and earn your heart. So don't put financial, material pressure on the men who are pursuing your heart. For some of you, that may be a huge cultural shift, but you may need to really pray about that, because that's too much for a guy. If your parents have done that, you need to back it way down. You need to learn the meaning of the words enough and content, so that your man can feel like he's a man doing the very best he can. And maybe he'll not do what your daddy did, and that's okay, because he's loving your heart. Does anyone else have an idea that you want to add in there with the dating tips? What about having your parents involved? Have you done that kind of thing? Okay. Where you've involved your parents in your dating relationships? That's a good thing. It's a good thing. Have your parents involved. Have them meet the person and interview and get to know the people you're dating. It's very, very helpful. Yahweh asked Abraham to leave everything familiar, his country, his people, his security. He asked Abraham to cleave to him and to follow him in complete trust. And God would be his provider and his sustenance into the unknown. Abraham just simply had to walk with God in faith. And that's the foundation for covenantal living and marriage. A man delights in a woman. He deeply loves her, and he wants to live his life entirely for her. She accepts his proposal, and she leaves her family and moves wherever he goes, and she trusts his passion for God and his protection and provision for her, and that his delight and his love for her will continue and grow with tenderness and knowing. That woman becomes that man's very home and his mirror, his source of strength and nourishment. And he enters into her life confidently. And she, in faith, trusts him with all of her life. She opens herself to him and receives all of him. This is unconditional acceptance, and it gives him boldness. This kind of love causes her desire to be just for him in every kind of way. Do you see the mutuality of that? The give and take of surrender and receiving and caring for each other's life. This is what you're moving toward by dating. So we need to pay attention to the behaviors of the people you date, but even more important, you need to pay particular attention to becoming a person worthy of being dated. And that should be the focus of our lives. Being the one worthy of the treasure of someone else's heart. I hope that just gives you some things to think about and to pray about and to consider as you go through this wonderful, important part of your life.